viewers, you're watching ERi-TV. Welcome to this week's open mic with my guests for this evening, Ms. Susan, UN country representative, and Mr. Dumisani Rasheleng. He is the charge d'affaires of the South African Embassy. And we are actually hosting this interview about 5 days later from celebrating Nelson Mandela Day, which was celebrated last Thursday, 25 July. Okay, so welcome to our program, Ms. Susan.
Thank you.
So of course we will be talking about Nelson Mandela and his legacy to the world, literally not just Africa, as he is an inspiration and a hero for many. So Ms. Susan, I'm going to start with you. What Nelson Mandela means to you, and what recollections you have personally of Nelson Mandela?
You know, for me, like for many young people at the time, he was an inspiration. I was still a child when the Free Nelson Mandela campaign came out. That's when he became a household name, at least to me. There were lots of discussions at home about Nelson Mandela. He just seemed like this larger-than-life person fighting for justice, etc. Of course, when you grow up, you realize there's more to Nelson Mandela than that figure that we saw, you know, as a child. But he really was a hero, somebody who stood larger than life for all the good things, the good values of life. And yes, important to me. I remember key moments, some discussions, but the word is inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Mr. Dumisani, your recollection of what Nelson Mandela means to you?
Yeah, Madiba, as a leader of, firstly, the African National Congress, which is now the governing organization in South Africa. Some of us, we knew him from the organization teachings, and the time that one got involved in politics and came to be taught about Madiba, we were taught about Madiba as a selfless leader, a leader who was having this determination and dedication to be part of the struggle, to contribute to the struggle against apartheid, for the liberation of South Africans. All. What I mean by all is that even the oppressors themselves, as you know, some of his sayings that he has fought against the white oppression, and in the same token would be fighting against black oppression or domination, you know. So we know him as this liberation struggle hero who wanted freedom for all, who wanted South Africa that would accommodate everybody despite his or her sexual orientation, race, or color.
Okay, all right. That's actually very inspirational words, all in themselves. Ms. Susan, I'm going to come back to you, and I'm going to quote from your speech. You have said that he is an inspiration to the world through his examples of courage and compassion. Okay, and now we are living in a world where youth are the backbone of everything that happens, literally, because they are the engine and the leaders of the future. Now, Ms. Susan, can Nelson Mandela and the examples he set inspire the youth? And with that as well, do the messages of Nelson Mandela resonate with the youth of today?
I think so. I think what I learned of Nelson Mandela is an individual who did not shy away from the challenges that were thrust upon him, so to speak. He started the Youth League, if I'm not mistaken, of the ANC with Oliver Tambo. So this is somebody who was actively engaged in wanting to see change and did things along those lines. So for the youth of today, I imagine it would be, well, find a cause that's bigger than yourself, you know, contribute, There are lots of challenges that face us everywhere that we are. Don't run away from those challenges. See how you can contribute to that which is larger than yourself. I think that's still very relevant of Mandela today to youth. I know that he had a special place for youth in his heart. My understanding, again, it's everything I have read, not necessarily everything I've lived. The focus on education, that youth should really see it as their duty to try and make sure that they educate themselves and contribute also to that broader society.
Okay, so the messages of Nelson Mandela are resonating.
Oh, for me, definitely they resonate. I'm no longer a youth. I cannot claim youth anymore. But when I was a youth, they definitely resonated with me, and I think they're still as relevant today as they ever were. You know, the challenges that we all face today, be it in Eritrea, in Cameroon, in Greece, wherever you go, there are lots of challenges. Lots of young people are not finding opportunities. There are inequalities in society. There's still pervasive poverty. There are lots of challenges. And I think for the youth, it's to not try to escape from that, but see how you can contribute to that which is larger than yourself. And there are many ways that you could do that, but perhaps we could come to that. One, we need ideas. We need young people to be discussing a lot of these things and seeing how they could come up with new ways that we could be trying to do things. We could do it more individually. Volunteering, for instance, is a key focus on Mandela Day since its inception. We could volunteer more. If you have a little bit more time or resources to share with others, we could try to do that more. So I think the messages are very, very relevant today, as they were in yesteryear.
Okay. Mr. Dumisani.
Yeah. You know, for me, there are two or so ideas or principles that we can take from Madiba. First of all, let's talk about the youth. As Susan has just said, participation of Madiba in politics, when he came to Johannesburg, met Walter Sisulu, joined the ANC in 1942, and together with others formed the African National Congress Youth League. Now, his participation as a youth, you know, should on its own be an inspiration to the youth. But one of the principles that probably we have to take seriously, both youth and elderly people, is that, you know, when he joined the African National Congress, they had been fighting since African National Congress is the oldest political organization in the whole continent, 1912, when it was formed. And they had been, you know, leading deputations, delegations to the British Empire, you know, to request that the British Empire should recognize that South Africa belongs to all the people, but the majority, who happen to be the indigenous African people, should not be left out in whatever decision is made about their country, because they are people also. And this did not yield any fruit, you know, until they, as the Youth League, came with an action plan in 1949. Now, here the crucial thing is, they came, they realized that this is the movement that can take us to our liberation. But in the process, its strategies and tactics were not bearing fruit, you know. So he didn't say, let's get out and form another, you know. So what I'm saying, one principle, loyalty, you know, to your organization, to your country, and to your principle, should be what the youth should say. He said, we will sit together as the members of this organization and make sure that when we change the progress, the program, you know, to more defiant program, where they were now striking, boycotting, and burning passes. That was within, not outside. The other thing that I think that has not been put into perspective is the principles. When Madiba believes in something, he believed in it. And I'm saying, now let's come later. In the later years, after he was released, there was a pressure on him as the leader of the ANC and the ANC in general to dish or to now turn against those countries that helped the African National Congress in the days of its needs. For instance, countries like Cuba, he was supposed to, throw them away and, not befriend them anymore. But he said, as a human being, what kind of a human being would you be where somebody helped you when you needed the help, and the other one, when you went to him or her, did not give you? And now he comes back and say you should now throw away that person in terms of friendship. I'm saying his principle that I cannot forsake somebody who I know who helped us in our bad times, just for you to come, probably whatever you want to promise me, So I'm saying loyalty and principle stand should be one of those things that the youth should take in regard to Madiba.
Okay, all right, okay. Now, I want to talk about the theme of that day, okay? This year's theme at Nelson Mandela's Day was Action Against Poverty, and also the first Sustainable Development Goal, goal number 1, No Poverty, which addresses the issue of ending poverty in all its forms. Now, my question, Ms. Susan, how does the SDG 1, ending poverty, link with Mandela's fight towards ending apartheid, namely discrimination in all its forms and uneven distribution of assets? Let's start with that.
I think it's part of the same struggle. I mean, trying to end apartheid was, from my limited understanding, making sure that the opportunities were equal for all. And we know that particular segments of the population were definitely more poor than others. And also, if I'm not mistaken, he spoke, when he was president, he spoke a lot about the issue of poverty. And one of the quotes, or at least part of the quote, is, so long as poverty exists, we are not, none of us is free. So I think it was all part of his struggle. And poverty is of course a huge issue today. It still is. We had the MDGs. We promised that we will reduce poverty. It was reduced, but extreme poverty still exists. And also inequalities between nations and within nations is growing. So it's still a huge problem for all of us. And for me, the part of poverty that really is the worst is, of course, the most extreme forms of poverty, where an individual cannot assure their basic caloric needs for the day. And that hunger really traps people further into poverty. So I think we need to galvanize more action and try and make sure that we really truly eradicate it in all its forms. There's a lot of work to do. And of course, it's not easy. It's still complex. Because if it was easy, if it wasn't complex, we would have sorted out all the issues a long time ago. Even in South Africa, with all the efforts, there's still a lot of poverty. So a lot of work for all of us to do. And at all levels, at the global levels, at the national levels, at the individual levels. I think at the individual level, you asked earlier, what could youth do? I think that idea is important, that we should all engage in these discussions. We should all feel that poverty shouldn't exist, because poverty is not inevitable. It exists because of certain structures or policies that we have in place, be it at the global or national levels. So we should develop a norm among ourselves that says poverty should not exist, and try and find all ways to try and eradicate it. And one of the key areas I think that we should be focusing on is food security. Everybody should be able to feed themselves, have adequate nutrition wherever they may be. And we can look both at the subnational levels, at the national levels, and of course also at the international levels, how we make sure that that comes to fruition. There's a role, of course, I've talked about the policies at national, but also at international levels. The world is quite an unequal place. Trade policies are not nearly as equal as they should be. So we should all be working towards a world where taking aside from the national policies that need to be in place, the support that comes from elsewhere to be able to help countries further their development, but a world that we're focused on beyond aid, so to speak, and focused more on trade and how to limit the challenges that we get from, for instance, climate.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. Ms. Susan, I'm going to get back to you because I want to ask Mr. Dumisani almost more like the same question, in what the youth of today or the present generation can do to, at an individual level, of course, okay, following the inspiration of Nelson Mandela, to take action towards ending poverty and improving the lives of the people around the world and the communities around them.
Yeah, you know, let me just go a little bit back and say, let's contextualize poverty, you know. Like Susan has said, I mean, South Africa is still facing a lot of rampant poverty, as much as we have been liberated, and we are still struggling like a lot of developing countries. But, you know, for me, the understanding of poverty should not be, you know, narrowly economical, 1 + 1 = 2 economics, full stop. Poverty, if you put context into poverty, for instance, in South Africa, we are saying, you know, before the advent of colonialism and slavery, our people were living the way they were living, you know. This phenomenon came and changed the whole style of life, you know, their culture, you know. And now you put in, hence 1912, the formation of the ANC, to say, for us to be able to combat poverty, we have to struggle for our freedom. We have to be able to choose our own destinies. We have to be able to decide, you know. That is when now you talk about poverty, you say, what means, what methods, what resources do you put in terms of, you know, fighting poverty? So what I'm saying is that all national liberation struggles in the whole of Africa revolved around one thing: land, which then would enable us, like you are saying, individually. If you own land, you own a piece of farm or just a garden, you are able to put some plants, seeds that, you know, cabbage, carrots, you know. But on a global scale, like Susan has said, we have to harness our resources as individual countries, as the globe, or even regional formations and continental formations, to see how we can combat, help each other, assist each other. You know, in South Africa, even now, you know, from culturally, we used to have to believe in collective, you know. Even say, for instance, let me just give you an example. If a person comes to a village, you know, who wants to come and stay in a village and has got nothing, the community, when they go and plow, you know. Usually everybody will come to you, plow your fields, you know, then come to her, plow her, you know. So it's a collective whereby even that individual, if you used cows for plowing, even if you didn't have cows, but the community will come and help and plow your field, and you'll help others, you know. So I'm saying here a collective would then be able to arrest poverty, you know. So if we again, in terms of Madiba again, let me go back to him, within the struggle, part of the struggle, when you say you want to liberate yourself, you want to liberate yourself for what? For you to be able to combat poverty, you know, individually and collectively.
Right. Okay, Ms. Susan, I'm going to come back to you now. Now, in the context of Eritrea, I mean, you have said yes. You know, we should start with achieving food security, and you know, and so on. Now, in the context of Eritrea, we are a people, literally, that are fighting to achieve food security, and you know, freedom to us is freedom from poverty, freedom from you know, achieving health care, and what have you. Now, I want you to tell me, in the context of Eritrea and the theme of the day.
Well, as you said, I think I read a government food security strategy from 2004, so the data is a little bit outdated, but I think the context still largely is there. It is known which areas are the most poor, where poverty is deepest. And that's I think, Southern Red Sea, Northern Red Sea, and Seba. Those are the semi-arid areas. That's the deepest areas. But in terms of the numbers of poor, you actually find them in the highlands because of the population. So you need slightly different strategies to combat that. Since most are farmers, you need to focus in terms of really making sure, and again, we live in a world that is so, you cannot trust the climate these days. The rain comes, it doesn't come, we're not sure. It's very variable in this part of the world. So you need strategies that, number one, really target farmers and help them produce more and more productively. And number two, make sure that nutritionally, we are all as well fed as we should be. So the combinations that we should be eating, we eat, etc. Because we know there are huge costs when we don't have these things. And I know that the government is really putting a lot of its action along those lines. But yes, first, for me, combat hunger. And I fully agree that poverty is multidimensional, obviously. And second, once you've combated hunger, I think you need to ensure social protection. You need to make sure that there are basics there for everybody. Development should not be a lottery. Your well-being should not be a lottery. You shouldn't be lucky to have been born to the right parents who were lucky in their term to have been born to the right parents. We should all have more or less a level playing field. So for that, you have to make sure that the chances at the beginning are more or less equal, that we all have access to healthcare, that we all have access to educational opportunities. And then later, let what should I say, our individual capacities and our wishes then determine where we fall in life. But the base should be equal for all.
All right.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Actually, it did.
But
It summed it all up, actually. All right. We're actually running out of. We took a little bit longer than we had actually expected. But any final messages, you know, on this special day, and the Nelson Mandela Day? We will start with you, Mr. Dumisani.
Yeah, you know, for me, I would say that Nelson Mandela International Day should be seen as us trying to emulate Madiba in his life. Whether, like I was saying, you know, this Mandela's participation was broadly political, you know, but at the end of the day, why do you struggle? You struggle, whether it's national liberation struggle, you struggle to be able to determine your future, to be able to combat poverty. And in short, you know, a great philosopher, Karl Marx, used to say basic human needs. shelter, clothing, and food. That's complete combat of poverty. And even now, from whatever angle we try to talk about poverty, we are trying to make sure that you have to have food, you have to have shelter, you have to have clothing. That restores your human dignity.
Okay. Ms. Susan?
Fully agree with that. And of course, we're talking about extreme poverty when you mention food, shelter. Eventually, we should go beyond that. But I think for me, Mandela Day is a call for everybody to do a little bit more. Of course, there are global things that need to happen. Of course, there are national things that need to happen, subnational things that need to happen, but individuals can also do things. There's a significant percentage of the population that has a little bit more than it needs. I know that everybody shares, but how far do you share, or how much do you share? And how much do you care? We all tend to care about those that are nearest and dearest to us. So you support family members, but you support that somebody else that you're not directly related to. For me, it's a call to do more in that sense. Do more, whatever more is. Give more, share more, and also ideas cannot be underscored. We need ideas. If these things were easy or simple, we would have sorted them out a long time ago. Maybe the problem is relatively easy actually, but very complex to fix. And we need ideas on how to navigate that. So discuss that more. In Eritrea, everybody is part of a group. You're part of your neighborhood group, your school group, your whatever group. Talk about these things more also. It should become unacceptable to all of us that some people live with this sort of deprivation. It is not yet. It is a growing norm, but it is not yet fully unacceptable to all of us that some people actually don't have enough to eat. Some children go to bed hungry or don't have opportunities for education and so on. So we need to help make it a norm, something that we don't accept. And when we don't accept it, we will be more creative in finding ways to deal with it. And that doesn't underscore, of course, the work that needs to happen nationally and the work that needs to happen internationally. But individuals have a lot that they can do.
So individual responsibilities.
Yes, do more.
Okay, or do more. Thank you so much, Ms. Susan and Mr. Dumisani. Dear viewers, that wraps up this week's Open Mic.